And welcome back, everyone, to Pokemon Team Creation Series. Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold. My girlfriend's getting a little better. And my dad just only got the cold that's been going around. But I'm now feeling relatively chipper. If you hear me cough once in a while, that's all it is. From Aldolfo Jenkins, or why am I having trouble saying that? In my head, it sounds different in my head than what's coming out of my mouth. Aldol, for some reason, I want to say Aldolfo, but it's Aldolfo. Anyway, Aldolfo Jenkins. We have another character from, what was it? Magical Knight Rare, I think it's called. Umi Ryuuzki. Now, I believe we did Shidu a little while ago. She was the fire elemental of the group. She was the fire magic user. Umi, as the name would suggest, is the water user. Umi is, I believe, one of the terms for like ocean or something along those lines. Hence the Yu-Gi-Oh card Umi. But Umi's described as being an attractive young lady, but she's also the most kind of sharp-witted, very brash, very upfront of the group. She's also a spoiled rich girl, but she's the water user, and she's skilled with a rapier. So I actually think it's a pretty relatively easy team to figure out from here. So her starter Pokemon. Now, when I thought of her starter Pokemon, I thought, okay, if I can make it a water type, make it a water type. But what I really thought on was, what would be a Pokemon that a rich, spoiled girl would want to have? Something rare, something extravagant, something beautiful. I went with, I hate when this thing does that. I went with Milotic. Milotic's a kind of a bread and butter one for characters, especially female characters who are described as being very beautiful or have water manipulation capabilities. And, this would make sense. Like, the girl wants, Milotic, but maybe she gets a Feebas, but she told us she raises the Feebas right, raises it properly, or trades it with a Prism Scale, whatever. She would get a Milotic. And sure enough, someday down the road, she gets a Milotic. So you get a beautiful water-type Pokemon that is so elegant that rich people would love to have it. This would make a lot of sense. Beyond that, though, whenever I think of someone who's got, like, money in Pokemon, weirdly enough, my thought goes to, what's her name? Melissa or Kate? I can't remember. The little girl in the third Pokemon movie who loses her dad, and Entei comes out of the book. And at the end of the movie, we see a little shot of her mom coming back, as well as her having a Teddiursa. Now, I don't think Umi here would have a Teddiursa, but it's a Gen 2 Pokemon that she could have had, and it ultimately gets. I think she could have started out with a Marill, and it turns into a Azumarill. I think that makes actually a lot of sense. It's an adorable Pokemon, Marill, and Azumarill. It's just this big round water bunny. I love Azumarill. It's why actually we don't have, when you break it down, we actually do not have a huge amount of water fairy types either. Oh, excuse me. Told you I'd be coughing just a little bit. But yeah, when you break it down, we don't have a lot of water fairy types, to the best of my knowledge. The Marill Azumarill line is one. You would have thought Milotic would have been a water fairy, which would have already amped it up something fierce, because now it would have had a dragon immunity, been strong against dragon, fighting, and dark, as well as water strengths as well. But no, Milotic is not a fairy type, despite it looking so. Whereas Azumarill is a cute little Pokemon, looks kind of like a fairy. I can understand that to whatever degree. Yeah, but in water fairy type, I know Primarina is a water fairy type. I'm blanking on if there are any other water fairy types I'm forgetting right now. Let me know if you can think of a water fairy type. But yeah, I think Azumarill makes for a good option. Then you get into the whole fencing aspect, something she learned as a girl, young girl, I mean. And I could have gone Honedge, but there is one Pokemon that does in fact have a sword, and that's Surfetched. And I think granted, she doesn't I don't believe she uses a shield, but he still uses a sword that as a rapier if he needs to. Granted, it's more designed like a longsword, but still, rapier, longsword, take your pick. More to the point, though, this would also make sense too, because Surfetched kind of has the design of Surfetched, a knight. So her coming from, a wealthy family, kind of aristocratic a little bit, maybe, that makes sense. Now, That being said, you'll notice right now it's about a 50-50 split on the water. That's because whenever I go to these characters from the Magic Knight Ray Earth Saga or whatever it is, uh, they are they have unique techniques to them. They usually about 3 different techniques. One of them is literally a water dragon technique that summons a giant Chinese water dragon. Oh, dragon, sorry, a water dragon in the shape of a Chinese Eastern dragon. Now, there are only 2 water dragon type Pokemon right now. The rumor is the pseudo legendary line in Gen 10 is going to be a water dragon type, but that's rumor mill at the moment. We have very little confirmation on what any Pokemon in Gen 10 are actually going to be right now. But apart from Tatsugiri, Kingdra, and Palkia, the only other we have is Walking Wake. But the thing is, the description talks about a Chinese dragon. An Eastern dragon, which is a serpentine, dragon of usually Asian lore. And for me, that's Gyarados. Gyarados is based on the story of the carp that goes up the waterfall and becomes a dragon. Granted, it's not a dragon. Probably should have been a dragon. Let's not mince words here. But it's still the exact representation you want for that technique. Now, there is something called, I believe it's like Sapphire Whirlwind, also translated out to like Water Spout, or Sapphiric, I should say. And luckily, there is a Pokemon move called Water Spout. So, I just had to find a Pokemon that could learn Water Spout. Surprisingly, though, it's not a lot of Pokemon that can learn Water Spout. It's actually Kyogre's signature technique, but luckily, Wailord can also learn it. And I'm sticking with Fully Evolved Mon this time around because her story comes... the series has been done for a while, so her story comes to an end, so it makes sense that her team has matured. And despite everything about her, like kind of how up her own ass she could be and all that, I do think she does deserve... She's still a good friend, which means she could have a Mega Evolution on her team. Which the last move she has is actually an ice-based move, so an ice-based Pokemon makes sense. And you know what? I haven't thrown this guy at any team yet, I don't think. So, I decided to throw a curveball out there. Mega Baxcalibur. Why? Because I'm actually on the side of liking Mega Baxcalibur. He's kind of an inverse sword in the stone a little bit, but also kind of a knight with that face helmet. I actually think this really improves on the design a lot of Baxcalibur. Honestly, I don't even hate Baxcalibur's design. I just think it needs to be refined. It's too round in its design a little bit. It needs to be a little bit more angular. And I still do not understand what these goddamn... Hold on. I can make it a little bigger. Hold on. What these goddamn red frills on his hands are. What are these dumb things? I have no idea. It still annoys me. The entire line has them. They're usually yellow for the other two. In this case, they're red for Baxcalibur. They must do with like the thermal regulation this Pokemon apparently does. But I digress. So yeah, I decided that when she's factoring power, friendship, all that, she can have a Mon like this on her team. A pseudo legendary who is already way more powerful. It would be the strongest Mon on her team, no doubt. It already resists pretty much every other Mon on the team type-wise, thanks to the Dragon typing, and is only really weak to the Surf Edge, which it could still probably beat in an outright fight. The only problem that she faces with Mega Baxcalibur is it's the last Mon on her team, which means if we were to try to do a playthrough of any of the games to see if she could become champion, she would not have a Baxcalibur. Hold on, I actually don't even remember what level Baxcalibur evolves at. I want to say it's 50. But it could be lower than that. It's not above 50, I don't think. But again, I used the Baxcalibur on my first playthrough of Scarlet and Violet. And I loved I loved using it. Like, that thing is a tank. A tank in general. That thing is when I say tank, I mean it will bulldoze over people. It'll bulldoze over opponents. But even then, even for an ice type, it does not have the worst defenses in the world. It really doesn't. And the dragon type gives a lot of resistances. All right then. But I mean, 145 attack, like that's a very nice, nice just physical moveset. Even a special moveset is not bad at 92. It's not even that slow, surprisingly. Oh, I was wrong. It actually evolves at level 54. Ooh, that actually that solidifies a lot what I determined in my breakdown. And what I mean by that, well, let's get the weaknesses and strengths first. Firsts. Firsts. Let's get the weaknesses and strengths first. There we go. So already this team kind of runs into a problem because it's got a ×3 weakness, the grass, a ×3 weakness to, a ×4 weakness to electricity of all things. It's got ×2 weakness to fairy, steel, and rock, surprisingly, because dragon ice is still weak to rock, and Gyarados is ironically weak to rock. But the trade-off is actually quite high, as you are ×5 strength. You have a ×5 strength against rock, ground, ×4 against fire, ×2 against dragon, and dark. So it's actually relatively balanced out. Right out the gate, is there any? Let me get it out of the way right now. There are a couple regions where you could stand a chance of being champion, but there's a giant group of them where you just can't. Right out the gate, Galar and Paldea is a straight no. Galar, you start against the grass gym. Milotic does not learn any move early enough to really combat a grass gym that early. So unfortunately, even though she's fully evolved and better stats than the Eldegoss, he's 2 against your 1 in type advantage. Milo's going to win that. You also just wouldn't be able to beat Leon regardless, because you'd first have to get through the Aegislash, whose defenses are tough. It will hit you hard at least once before it goes down, and then you got to deal with that damn Dragapult. And my friend, that Dragapult has Thunderbolt. It's going to waste for two-thirds of this team, no problem. Then you still got to deal with Surfetched. You only have Surfetched and Baxcalibur. Baxcalibur, maybe, but Dragapult's getting at least one hit in, guaranteed. So then you got to deal with Haxorus, which Baxcalibur can handle, but then it's all up in the air at that point. If he's got Mr. Rhyme or Rhyperior, you should be fine. But the Seismitoad being water type would make it a little difficult for Baxcalibur. And then it comes down to, could you beat the Inteleon? You're not really strong against it, but it's not really strong against you. It's also the squishiest, so maybe. You should actually have no problem on either front there, because Rillaboom's going to be weak to Baxcalibur. Cinderace isn't going to have a type advantage. But, that said, Leon's Charizard is going to give you a problem. And you can't, if you're using Mega Evolution, you can't use Dynamax. So, and when Champions comes out, it's going to be interesting to see how those actual mechanics truly interact with each other. I know there's like emulators where you can see how they interact, but ultimately, yeah, I would Charizard and the move pool it has, Baxcalibur might go down pretty hard. Again, that's assuming you even take the Dragapult down, to be fair. But regardless, you couldn't get past Milo anyway. You would not get past Iono and Paldea for obvious reasons. Yes, you have Surfetch, sure, but she's an electric type gym leader. She's taking down your first 2, no problem. You won't even have Azumarill yet. You'll only have Meryl. And then you got Surfetch can put some work in, but that's all assuming that you're going to be able to take down the Mismagius. And I'm going to tell you right now, again, that combo of just Confuse Ray and Hex alone, oh, yeah, that's, why, see, this is why I agree a lot of people level scaling needs to be put into the game, because she would have made, if you would like fully upgrade her team to, I think she, if I'm not mistaken, she had a Luxio, God, is it Wattrel? Yeah, Wattrel, Bellybolt, and Mismagius. If you had upgraded that to Kilowattrel, which, by the way, I again used on my playthrough team, Kilowattrel hits like a tank. I use that. Hey, let me phrase that. It hits like a railgun. That thing is fast and it hits hard. And then you add a Luxray on the team. Yeah, and then you fill out those move pools a lot more effectively. She would have made a very good final gym leader. That said, though, so you're not getting past her either. I actually don't think you could get past Gita, to be frank. Although, to be fair, I'm not sure if I actually clocked if you could do Gita. Let me think on that real quick. Because the Veluza, it's water to water, but it's, Apathra. Apathra, you just gotta take the Apathra down. Veluza is water to water plus psychic on Veluza's part, so it has a psychic move. You're probably gonna end up losing Milotic in the process if you're not careful. Go-Go's a problem. Gyarados is the only water mon you have on the team that resists. Excalibur, that would put in a lot of work. Surfetch could take care of King Gambit, assuming it hasn't already been taken down. It'll also take care of Avalugg and Glamora. So actually, no, you could get past Gita. Yeah, but that's assuming you got past the other gym leaders, which you wouldn't. Then there's Unova, and the answer simply is no. You don't get past Lisa. With those Emolgas having Aerial Ace on them and Electric type just killing half this team, no problem, easy. Oh god. Forgive the snorting of the nose. It's it's not likely. Even Surfetch isn't going to help you there. And then you got, if you even factor in the champions, if you did get to them, Iris, sure, Azumarill is fairy type, but Hydreigon's got more than Dragon Pulse on it. It will probably be able to handle you no problem. Same with Haxorus, to be honest. Haxorus, I mean, it's got Dragons, also has Earthquake. Surfetch can actually handle about half the team, or even like just a third of the team, because it can deal with Lapras and it can deal with Aggron no problem. However, Druddigon and Archeops, not so much. Unlikely you could beat her. And then Alder, you have no answer for his bug types, really. Which is weird to say, but bug type is actually not a type this team is really good against at all. You have one Mon who legitimately is resisted by bug in terms of, actually, fairy type moves are resisted by bug too, but with Surfetch. And you just don't have an answer to get through the sheer defense of that Escavalier, like none whatsoever. It's just not it's just not going to happen, unfortunately. And that's not even taking into account Buffalont, Selgor speed's going to outspeed anything on this team. Yes, Mega Excalibur can come in clutch to a certain degree, but it doesn't have a move that's really going to be designed to take down Volcarona, who will be quiver dancing a couple times at that point. So, I don't, and again, that's not even factoring in things like Druddigon again, Vanilluxe. I mean, I think it's possible, but unlikely. I'll say a tentative maybe. Then in Johto, honestly, you could get all the way. Let's now move on to the regions you could probably handle more effectively. In Johto, you could probably get in all the way to Lance. You could get to Lance, most likely. I'd honestly say it's a possibility you could beat him too. Mind you, he does have 3 Dragonites with elemental moves on them, including Electric, which means a giant chunk of your team is going down. But Excalibur is a dragon that's really designed to kill dragons. I think that might be another reason for the giant sword. It's a dragon busting sword. So, I don't know. So, I'd say it's a maybe. It's a maybe. But because its speed is a little lacking, the Dragonites might be able to bring it down eventually. In Kanto, I'd be lying if I say you're not going to struggle with Surge. In fact, Surge could theoretically take you down, but Surfetch isn't weak to Electric, and it hits pretty hard, so things like Magnemite will go down quick. So I'd say it's a wash. You could get past them. Erica, though, is going to be a problem. In fact, Erica might be your stop because, half your team at that point is just straight up weak to grass. But beyond that, she also uses a lot of status moves, too. So it might be Erica you stop at, if I'm going to be honest. And Koga would be a little problematic, so would Sabrina, but nothing you couldn't handle in theory. You'd also be able to handle Giovanni, no problem. And Blue, you flat out could beat, but I don't think you could get past Erica, if I'm going to be frank. In Hoenn, honestly, your first biggest problem would be Juan or Wallace, depending on which version you're playing. This is just due to the fact that it's water versus water. You don't have a good answer for your own type specialty, which is unfortunate, but it does happen a lot. And then you would still have to deal with a couple others. Frankly, you should be able to handle Drake between Black Excalibur and Azumarill without too much difficulty. Steven, honestly though, you run into a wall with Steven. The only mon you have on the team that's even got any type of advantage against anything he has is Surfetch, and even then, that's really only against Lileep and Aggron. That's it. The rest are ground, steel, or rock mixed with a typing that's going to be resisted. Anorith admittedly is weak to, I should say, Anorith and Claydol are admittedly weak to water, but it's kind of irrelevant. You still have to first get past the Skarmory, which you have no good option for. Not even Baxcalibur is a good option at this point. And then that's not even factoring in like the fact that most of these mon probably have enough tankiness to take a hit. Lily specifically, if it survives a hit and starts getting off Giga Drains, you're in trouble. And that's not even bringing Metagross or, God forbid, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire with Mega Metagross. So no, I don't think you'd beat Steven. Cynthia, also, you're not beating Cynthia. Well, let me rephrase that. You might have been able to beat Cynthia. You actually probably could, in fact, beat Cynthia. You'd have to swap out my Milotic with Azumarill to fight the Spiritomb, but you could do that no problem. The next one that comes out is the Gardevoir. So what you do then is you just bring out the Baxcalibur. Don't even Mega Evolve, but just bring out the Baxcalibur. Take that down. You obviously could probably even take down the Gastrodon. The Milotic, that one you might need to think on a little bit. You don't want to... Baxcalibur's your ace in the hole right now. You take that out of the equation. Maybe throw in Surfetch and duke it out. Lucario, if the Surfetch can survive going, is still around, at least get a good hit on the Lucario. It might take something else down, but you'll take that down. And then it comes out Garchomp, which you can easily take out with the Mega Baxcalibur. No problem, you beat Cynthia. But you know you're not beating? You're not beating Gardenia. With only a Marill. Remember, her mon are at like 19, if I'm not mistaken, so at best you get a level 21. Milotic and Marill are not going to be able to cut it on that team. Against Gardenia, ain't happening. So unfortunately, this is one of those cases where you would win if you could get there. And then finally, weird one to just end off on, but in Kalos. Excuse me. You'd again struggle with Ramos. I think that's fair to say. Even Gyarados would still struggle. Because Gyarados, sadly, except for Hurricane, doesn't learn flying moves. And Hurricane's not even a natural move for it to learn. I think it's a TM move. So you might as well just treat it like a water type that's resistant to grass. Ramos is going to be a problem, as will Clement. Honestly, there's a good argument. Sorry, that was the word I'm looking for. Sorry, head cold. This fog in the sense is just a little bit. There's a good argument to be made that you could just straight out beat both of them, but you could be beaten by both of them. But if you get past them, you frankly should be able to clear the remainder of the Kalos region, and that's including the Elite Four. None of the Elite Four is ultimately that hard for you to beat with this team. And then there's Diantha, which is problematic to say the least. I put it at a tentative maybe. The reason for that is you start with Milotic. She brings out Hawlucha. It's got Swords Dance, X Scissors, and Flying Press. Well, okay, you got to make a decision. Do you keep in the Milotic, or do you just try, or do you switch into something that maybe could take the hit more? Like Gyarados would resist a Flying Press, or same with the Azumarill. Personally, knowing it has Poison Jab, you don't want to go into the Azumarill. You definitely don't need to go into the Surfetch. Wailord's got a lot of HP, but its other stats are just so-so. I mean, they're not bad. They're just not, like, scaled up to the massive HP this thing has. Gyarados is probably the only real reasonable one to go into, so I would say if you want to keep the Milotic, you go into Gyarados, but Gyarados is going to have to take a hit. Actually, no, that's not true, because she starts with a Swords Dance. But the Poison Jab's going to hurt. I would say you probably would lose the Gyarados. So then you go in, she brings in Tyrantrum. I would probably then at that point bring in Surfetch, because Surfetch now can run the clock on Tyrantrum and Aurorus. But then she brings in Goodra. Then I'd probably switch into Azumarill because of the immunity. But that's not an immediate win. Goodra's tanky. So I'd be back and forth for a bit. And then also there's going to be Gourgeist. Now at that point you could bring in the Baxcalibur to take down the Gourgeist. The problem is that Mega Gardevoir is still has Moonbeam. Is it Moonbeam or Moonblast? Moonblast. as well as other moves to take down. And she also has Thunderbolt to take down all the electric types. It's really going to come down to how you handle that early game, and if Baxcalibur can get a serious enough hit in on that Gardevoir. Because if it cannot, and that Baxcalibur goes down while the Gardevoir lives, you're done. It's over. So that's why I call it a tentative maybe. So ultimately, that is my team for Umi from Magic Knight Rayearth. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.